Hi, it's Miss Blue again. If you will, if your coaches have not, please have them pass out. It says Annotations Guide for Nonfiction Text Features the Titanic Tragedy. And it's kind of a thick packet, but don't worry, you're not really actually doing anything on this one except putting your name on it. So today is Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. All right, with your pencil, hope everybody has a pencil in their hand. If you don't, please get one. Put your first and last name where it says name. First and last name, print your first and last name so that I can read it. Put your grade, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's not an option, so put your name and your grade right now before we do anything. And then you can put your pod. Okay, what we're going to do on this first part, this is about the Titanic, which I think most of all of you know. It's a big ship that sunk many years ago, and we'll learn about that in just a few minutes. But what we're going to be looking at is the things on the outside. We're just going to be looking at things, so just follow along and don't worry about reading the story or anything about it, because we're going to do that in just a few minutes, okay? So just kind of follow along with me. I'm just showing you the parts of a book, a novel, a short story. Okay, let's look at this one. So this one is obviously a book. Okay, over here on the right side it says Table of Contents. And they're showing you with the arrow where this is where that says Table of Contents. It's located in the front of a book. It lists the parts of a book and their page numbers, and it's listed in the order they are found in the book. So that has blah, blah, birth of the thing, the voyage begins, the ship of dreams, so on, and the numbers go straight down. Okay, that's page 1. Okay, turn the page. Okay, remember, we're not reading the story right now, we're just looking. So let's look at the left side first. Okay, heading, you see where those 2 arrows are at the top? The title of a page or article. So this is the title of the article. What happened to the Titanic? And then over here on the left side, it says subheading. And it's pointing to the birth of the RMS Titanic. A smaller heading under a main heading gives the topic of only one part of the text. Below that, it has an arrow and it says caption. So, you know, down here it says photograph, and that's a big arrow out there at the top and a little arrow at the bottom. Photographs are obviously the pictures, and then the caption tells you about the pictures. It says above, the Titanic is constructed 1911. Below, sea trials are on. They have sea trials. They try out the ship on April 2nd, 1912. Okay, turn over here to the right side. Up at the top, it says another subheading, the voyage begins. And then here on the right side, a caption, words under a photo that gives a short explanation or description of the photo. Above, the Titanic at Southampton prior to departure, and then below at Cork Harbor. And these are photographs, obviously. Down here, though, with this arrow at the bottom right, is a visual aid. A visual aid is not a photograph. It's usually a map, it could be a graph, it could be several different things, but it's not a photograph, okay? This visual aid is a map, a chart, graph, or table used to illustrate facts or data in a way that can be best shown in a format other than plain text. And what this is, it's showing a map of where they were going to be cruising on this beautiful brand new cruise ship. Okay, turn the page, page 3. Okay, page 3. Okay, we start at the top. We have another subheading, the ship of dreams. And over here on the right, lifeboats. Down here at the bottom right, icebergs. Over here on the left, bold type print. Thicker, darker print used to place emphasis on important or new words, and this one was staterooms. That's not a word that we use very much anymore, but a stateroom is a very lavish, beautiful, like in a hotel, which it could be a stateroom in a hotel, but this is on a beautiful cruise liner, and so it's a beautiful room with a living room, a bathroom, which in those days was really big time, and a beautiful bedroom with lovely furnishings and paintings and all kinds of things. Okay, let's once again a caption. This is where it tells about the photographs. One of the many first-class staterooms on board the Titanic, and then on the right side, a third-class stateroom with a sink and 2 bunks. So the rich people on the left stayed on the left side, and the poorer people, they had it pretty slim. It was just like little bunk bed type things and just a sink. It was not very fancy. Okay, another caption over here under this picture. Lifeboats aboard the Titanic were capable of carrying less than half of the passengers. That's something interesting to know. Okay, italicized print, it's slanted print used to place emphasis on words or follow grammatical rules. In this case, the name of the ship is written in italics. Do you notice that on that caption? Titanic is kind of written to the right, kind of and slanted. Well, that's called italicized print. Okay, turn to page 4. Okay, once again, we have a subheading, the Titanic sinks. We have a photograph and caption at the top. The iceberg believed to have been struck by the Titanic, photo taken on April 15th, 1912. Bold type, dawn. It says the ship's crew began notifying passengers to don, means to put on. All right, here we go. Look on the bottom left here, label. It's a name used to describe a part of a diagram. So they're showing you that here's the iceberg, and then here's the hull of the ship. And then this is a diagram showing the ship. As the Titanic struck the iceberg, the hull was not sliced. Instead, the iceberg caused the plates on the side of the ship to buckle and rivets to pop, damaging 5 compartments. The ship was designed to stay afloat with a maximum of 4 compartments flooded, but how many did they have damaged? They had 5. Okay, look over here on the right. Italicized print again, the RMS Carpathia, and that's just a name of another ship. Okay, turn to page 5. Okay, at the top we have a photograph and a caption. Titanic survivors, you notice Titanic's in italicized. Survivors wait to be rescued. This photograph was taken from the deck of the Carpathia on the morning of April 15th, 1914. And then they have 3 bold types: bow, the stern, and vertical angle. Okay, over here at the top, subheading, is another one is rescue. And then italicized print again, the Titanic over on the right. And then down here at the bottom is a visual aid, a map, a chart, a graph, or table used to illustrate facts or data in a way that can be best shown in a format other than plain text. So let's look at this. The fate of the Titanic's passengers by class. Okay, so the first column shows you the class of people, first class, second class, third class, the people, the number of people on board, the percentage saved. So let's look. First class, there were 325 people. 62% were saved, so that's more than half of them were saved. The second class, there's 285 people. 41% of them were saved. Not quite half, but some were saved. But look at the third class. This is if you've ever seen the movie, you know the story. Third class, there were 706 people in third class. That's the very bottom of the ship. And only 25%, that means 1/4, and no, my math is not good enough to figure out how many that were saved, but I know some of you are very smart in math and can figure out how many out of 706 people is 25%, but sorry, I can't. But anyway, there were not very many people saved from the third class. It was very, very tragic. Okay, turn the page to the last page. Okay, illustration. This is an illustration, a drawing used to show a concept, sometimes added to make a page look better. So this is showing a newspaper. The Titanic sinks, 1,500 perished. That means 1,500 people died in the sinking of the Titanic. They have another subheading, aftermath. That means what happened afterwards. Over here on the right, this is a glossary. A glossary is a list of important words and their meaning listed in alphabetical order found at the end of the book or text. All right, let's look at these. Bow, that's the front of a ship, the forward part of the hull of a boat. Don, to put on clothing, to assume or take on. Embarkation, the boarding of passengers onto a ship. Stateroom is a private compartment on a ship, usually sleeping quarters. The stern is the rear part of a ship. Vertical angle, in a position that is straight up and down. So that ship, before it sank, was like this, straight up and down. All right, and then this is an illustration of the Titanic's. It had, this was a picture on the side of the boat. Maybe even their life jackets looked like that on the side of the boat. Okay, turn to the last page. Indexed, a list of keywords, topics, names, and places and the pages where they can be found. Listed in alphabetical order, found in the back of a book or at the end of a text. So it says index, and then anything that you might want to look up, it's in alphabetical order, and then there are the page numbers where you can go flip back and find it. Okay? These are this is a nonfiction. This is for a nonfiction book, meaning a book that's true. So the Titanic story was obviously a very true story, and these are the types of things that you need to know when reading it. Okay, if you will, take this other part that doesn't have any annotations on it. It's just plain, and it's the story, and I'll read it to you. Even though I know most of you have probably seen the movie and, like me, and know pretty much everything about it. Okay, turn to page 1. It kind of has one, it's kind of like a book. So let's go look on the left side. What happened to the Titanic? Birth of the RMS Titanic. The White Star Line was founded in Liverpool, England by John Pilkington and Henry Wilson in 1845. It was later purchased by its director, Thomas Henry Ismay. Ismay's son, J. Bruce Ismay, became a partner in the business in 1891. It was J. Bruce Ismay who dreamed up the RMS Titanic in April of 1907. The Titanic's design was finished in 1908, and construction of the ship began in 1909. The RMS Titanic first set sail on April 2nd, 1912, for its sea trials. It arrived in Southampton, Liverpool, the following day. All right, look over on the right side. Look at your heading. The voyage begins. Titanic's maiden voyage, that means the first actual voyage, that means where it's filled with all the tourists and all the people that are in the second class, and then all the people that are in the third class, which are usually the servants, the people that serve the rich people, the people that keep things clean, do the laundry, do the cooking, etc. Okay? Okay. Titanic's maiden voyage actually began on April 10, 1912, after accepting the embarkation or boarding of passengers and crew in Southampton. As Titanic left the port, it nearly collided with another steamliner, New York. The two ships only missed each other by about 4 feet. Whew, that's pretty scary. I never knew that fact. 4 hours later, the Titanic arrived in Cherbourg, a French port where it collected more passengers. Titanic made one last stop for passengers at Cork Harbor in Queenstown, Ireland on April 11th before beginning its Atlantic crossing. The next 3 days aboard the Titanic passed without incident as the ship began its intercontinental voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. So it was crossing the entire Atlantic Ocean, and they were going all the way to New York City. Okay? Turn the page. Look at page 3 to your left. The Ship of Dreams. The Titanic offered different accommodations on the ship based on ticket price. First-class passengers sailed in luxurious, spacious rooms. They ate in fine restaurants and enjoyed a gym and swimming pool. Although third-class accommodations were very different from first class, they were much better than those on other ships at that time. Their staterooms, or rooms where guests slept, were tiny, often containing only a sink and bunks. There were only 2 bathtubs for the more than 700 third-class passengers to share. Third-class passengers also had access to a dining hall and public gathering place. Still, most third-class passengers were pleased with the impressively clean accommodations. Okay, top part of page 4. Lifeboats. The RMS Titanic held a total of 20 lifeboats capable of carrying just about 1,200 people. The number of lifeboats on board was actually more than the ship was required to carry by law. Still, if all of the lifeboats were filled to capacity, only half of the people on the Titanic would have fit. So that's a lot of people not fitting in the lifeboats. Iceberg. On April 14th, Titanic received a number of warnings from other ships nearby about icebergs in the area. Despite the warnings, the ship's captain, Captain Edward Smith, ordered that the Titanic continue on at full speed. Around 11:40 p.m. on the night of April 14th, 1912, Frederick Fleek, a lookout on board, he's a sailor that was on, keeping an eye out, looking for things. A lookout for the Titanic, turn to page 5, spotted an iceberg just ahead in Titanic's path. Fleet alerted officials on the ship. Immediately, First Officer William Murdoch ordered that the ship turn away from the iceberg and the engines be reversed in order to stop the ship. It was too little, too late. The Titanic struck the iceberg, causing a series of holes below the water line of the ship. So, part of the ship's up here and there's no water touching it. But down below where the ship is floating and going through the water with their engines, that's the water line. The Titanic sinks. Water began to flood the holes caused by the impact of the iceberg. 5 watertight compartments began to fill with water. Soon it became clear that the Titanic was doomed. The ship's crew began notifying passengers to don or put on life jackets and report to the deck. That's the very top part of the ship. At this time, passengers were not told that the ship was sinking, and many ignored the orders, preferring to remain in their warm rooms rather than be outside in the chilly night air. First-class passengers were assisted to deck, while second and third-class passengers were merely awoken in order to leave the rooms. Sadly, many third-class passengers were unable to find their way to safety, either lost in the maze of corridors or blocked from escape due to the locked gates. Officials began loading the lifeboats with women and children first. Some men were also put on lifeboats when there were no more women and children waiting at the time. Although the lifeboats were capable of holding 68 people safely, most lifeboats were lowered with only half that number on board, as the crew was afraid of putting too many people on a lifeboat. Had the lifeboats been filled to capacity, an additional 500 people could have been saved. J. Bruce Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line Company, was among those loaded into lifeboats. That was very controversial. As the lifeboat evacuation proceeded, distress signals were sent out over radio waves and flares were launched from the ship. Another ship in the Atlantic, the RMS Carpathia, heard the ship's call for aid and headed that way. It would take the RMS Carpathia 4 hours to travel the 58 miles to the Titanic. The crew of the Carpathia put themselves, look on the next page, page 7, in danger, traveling at dangerous speeds and dodging nearby icebergs to reach the distressed Titanic. At around 2:15 a.m., the ship suddenly began to sink more rapidly. The bow, or front end of the ship, dipped under and water began to pour onto the ship. The angle of the ship increased as the stern, or back end of the ship, lifted up into the air, exposing the ship's giant propellers. Then the ship began breaking into 2 pieces, and the bow separated from the stern, and that sank to the bottom of the ocean. The stern bobbed in the water for a few minutes before the back end rose to nearly a vertical angle straight up and down, and then sank into the Atlantic Ocean. Those who remained on the Titanic either jumped into the frigid waters or sank with the ship. Rescue. As hundreds of people entered the frigid waters with the ship, their cries for help were largely ignored by those in nearby lifeboats out of fear that the frantic victims might storm and topple over the lifeboats. Eventually, one lifeboat would return to rescue survivors from the water, but only after waiting until a considerable amount of time had passed. In the end, only 7 people were pulled from the water after the ship sank. Those in lifeboats would wait until around 4:15 for the RMS Carpathia to arrive and take passengers aboard. Some passengers climbed up rope ladders to reach the Carpathia, while others had to be hoisted in slings. By 9 a.m., all surviving passengers were on board the RMS Carpathia. It would take 3 full days for the Carpathia to reach New York, meaning New York City, due to icebergs and thick fog. It was only then that the public became aware of the depth of the Titanic tragedy. And we went over this a while ago of how many people died. Okay, turn the page. All right, the aftermath. And here's our newspaper again. So 1,500 people died on that night when that ship broke apart. Aftermath. As the details of the Titanic sinking were revealed, the public was outraged. Questions emerged. Why had the ship proceeded at full speed despite the iceberg warnings? Why had the Titanic carried so few lifeboats? Why had J. Bruce Ismay rescued himself while women and children were still on board? In response to the public outcries, laws were changed, requiring ships to carry enough lifeboats for the number of passengers on board. Furthermore, the U.S. government passed the Radio Act of 1912 to require that ships leave radio communications on 24 hours a day in order to be able to receive distress calls from nearby ships. By 1913, the United States Coast Guard formed the International Ice Patrol to monitor and report on icebergs in the northern Atlantic Ocean. Okay, look over here at the glossary. We've already talked about that glossary and the picture of the Titanic. Right there, that's one of their life vest type, and wasn't a life vest, but it was a life preserver. Okay, turn to the last page and it shows you the index again. I hope you enjoyed the story. I know most of you probably seen the movie, but I thought this would be a really interesting way to kind of cover not so fun things like annotations for nonfiction text features. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you learned something today about not only the Titanic, but about nonfiction text features. I hope you have a good afternoon, or a good day, good evening, and I miss you, and I love you, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.